Morning, everyone. It is Monday, November 18th, 2019. And speaking of the 18th, you are tuning into the 18th installment of the Five Starr Wrestling Report. Pretty cool how that worked out. This is the YouTube channel that, as we have established since day one, and will continue to establish going forward, this is the YouTube channel dedicated to bringing you thoughts on all the major wrestling news topics and discussions from the big sources and articles throughout the week. If you are checking out our show for the first time, and you are interested in keeping posted with FSWR content in the short term and long term, make sure you go ahead and click that subscribe button there, as well as click that bell icon to keep updated on all uploads pertaining to this channel. We have 2 uploads each week. We have our Monday installment, where, as I just noted, covers all of the big talking points in the wrestling media over the previous week. And we have in-depth discussions on the stories and what their implications are, should they have any. And we also have our Friday Review Series edition, where each week we talk about the Wednesday Night Wars and recap AEW and NXT programming, and we also take a look at NWA Power from Tuesdays. All of this taking place each week on the FSWR channel. So if that interests you, come hang out here each Monday and Friday on the Five Starr Wrestling YouTube channel. It is always a wild ride here, and I'd love to have you all join along for the ride. As cliche and awkward as that sounded in execution, I meant every damn word of it. Anyway, we've got a decent amount of stuff to talk about this week, and I want to make sure I give myself enough time to get this edited and uploaded before I have to leave for work in a little while, so let's get going. So back in mid-October, there was an article that came out from Forbes regarding WWE stances on releasing talents that were looking to get out of their current contracts, essentially with the idea being that WWE wanted to prevent particular talents from jumping over to All Elite Wrestling, or at least the talents that Vince considered threats as competition. And in fact, if you will recall, there was a huge outburst during that time, specifically during a period where we were hearing that Vince was going out of his way to freeze certain guys' contracts, be it due to sustained injuries that kept them out of action for a longer stretch of time, Luke Harper and Dash Wilder, for example, or in a unique case of someone like a Mike Kanellis, who initially re-signed a 5-year deal with WWE back in July, I believe, for approximately $500,000 annually, and as recently as last month, reached out to request his release on social media, with the rumor there being that Mike was supremely frustrated with his treatment on WWE programming after re-signing, possibly with his mentality being that he was going to be treated better after committing to a longer-term deal with the company going forward. Good one, Mike. But the reason Mike's contract situation is unique is that he was on record with wanting to get out of his initial WWE contract as far back as January of this year. So, whether this is a circumstance of Vince trying to stick it to Mike for feeding into the gravy train ploy, offering Mike more money in order to re-sign with some kind of false implication that he would be pushed harder and given more dates to work, or if Vince considers Mike Kanellis a threat as competition if he were to jump to AEW, so he's trying to keep him locked under contract for the time being, that is yet to be determined as well. But here's where the story kind of turns on its head entirely. Because as recently as this weekend, there were articles and reports coming out that WWE were going to start granting release requests under the presupposition that those talents would either A, not immediately jump ship to AEW, or B, if they did jump ship, Vince and the company would be smart enough to know that they wouldn't be any major money-circulating threat to the WWE in the future. And more than likely as a result of this news, we have also seen more current WWE talent putting in their requests, including talents such as Sin Cara and Oni Lorcan. Yes, Sin Cara. For those of you that have kept in touch with the main roster consistently, yes, he does still exist, apparently. Go figure. So Mark Middleton posted an article on November 15th over at Wrestling Inc. regarding some detailed analysis on the follow-up to these articles. Cara took to Twitter earlier this week and issued a statement on Twitter to announce that he has requested his release. Word going around Monday's Raw on the same day that he posted the Twitter statement was that WWE would not be granting the releases. Cara reportedly has around 3 years left on his current WWE contract. Due to the release request, it was reported that Cara was being sent home. It's been reported that WWE officials are not interested in releasing talents who ask because they want to keep them from signing with AEW or other promotions. However, word going around now is that they may be giving releases once again, at least to some talents, with the belief that those talents would not be signing with AEW, or if they did, would not help AEW any. With that said, it's now believed that Cara has a chance to have his release granted. So when you look at something like this, I mean, it basically boils down to two simple questions. Should Vince let talent go who deem themselves unhappy or guys that Vince has no vision for with the current WWE programming? Or should Vince continue to withhold talent until their contracts expire with the sole purposes of preventing them from leaving for the direct competition in AEW? And to be honest with you, I think in order to answer a question like this, we have to look at the circumstances of all the talent that are putting in their requests to basically get an idea of whether or not Vince should even entertain the thought of letting them go. Because I'll be honest, I read a story of what happened with guys like Mike Kanellis and even Sin Cara, who supposedly re-signed a new deal not that long ago. And the only thing I can think is, well, you idiots signed the contract. I mean, you pretty much knew ahead of time what you were getting yourselves into before you put that pen to paper. So why should I feel sympathy for you? It sounds like you guys were just victims of being played by the system. So it's harder to feel sorry for guys like Kanellis and Sin Cara in comparison to guys like Luke Harper and the Revival, for example, who were essentially victims of contract freezing due to sustained injuries. And in the case of poor Dash, an injury that happened, I believe, back in 2016. So that really sucks. But then again, you know, Vince does have that leverage to hold up talent's contracts if they have to miss a particular amount of time and can't fulfill their designated terms of agreement. Sucks, but I mean, that's just kind of how the corporate world goes. But you know what? On top of all this, I think we also need to analyze this realistically and not try to overthink the situation. I mean, let's look at a handful of the guys that are putting in their requests, or at least the guys that have been at the forefront of this discussion recently. Here are the list of names that I've been able to gather here. The Revival, Luke Harper, Rusev, Mike Kanellis, Oni Lorcan, and Sin Cara. I mean, you look at these guys, and as good of workers as some of these guys are, come on. Let's be honest. Who of these 6 or 7 guys that I just mentioned are going to be of any grave threat to WWE's overall bottom line if they were to jump ship to AEW? None of these guys were major top stars in WWE. None of these guys are in the top 20 merch sellers, according to Sports Wiki. None of them were enough of star attractions to sell out tickets or live venues, and none of them were ever going to be pushed as top attractions to begin with. You know, and while the idea of seeing a Rusev or a Revival show up on AEW Dynamite might spark an initial rating spike or, short-term fan intrigue, none of these guys are ever going to move the needle for AEW's infrastructure. They'd be guys who, might get a little more TV exposure than what they did in WWE, might get some higher-end storylines and programs on the cards pretty soon. If you think I'm wrong, humor me for a sec here and watch what they've done with guys like Shawn Spears recently. Pretty soon they'd be regressed down the card into lower tier status. And all that hype of seeing these guys show up on AEW would lose intrigue after a short while. Which is why I've been on record saying that the Randy Orton contract negotiations were extremely crucial for both parties. Say what you want about Randy Orton. I've never been a particular fan of his, and I've always thought the guy was overrated as a worker and a talent. But the thought of Randy Orton signing with AEW and showing up on TNT TV would be a monstrous threat to Vince. I mean, with the current standings they have right now, it's equivalent of them losing a Roman Reigns or a Seth Rollins or an AJ Styles or a Becky Lynch or even a Charlotte Flair to a lesser extent. Randy Orton is on that scale with those talents. And if you think AEW would have passed up on the opportunity to bring in a top guy like Randy Orton to a big money contract, you're crazy. And that's the other thing we have to keep in mind too. I mean, if we're looking strictly under the umbrella of WWE versus AEW in this conversation, we are also insinuating that AEW even has any interest in any of these talents I just listed. They've already been on record saying that they're not looking to bring in every former WWE talent to major contract deals, which is a smart business decision on their part. So then that begs the question, what are guys like Harper and Rusev and Kanellis looking to gain by getting out of their current contractual deals with WWE? I mean, they have to be cognizant of the fact that no matter where they end up outside of WWE, they're going to be making significantly less money. So I really don't know what their mindset is. Is it a pride thing? Or are they just supremely confident in the idea that the news would break out that they've been granted their releases from WWE and that Cody and Kenny and the Bucks would just instantly swallow these guys up for big money contracts? Surely they have to have the good business sense to know that these guys probably aren't quality investments, right? Would I sign any of these guys if I ran my own company? I mean, I would absolutely sign the Revival as my top heel team to build babyface challengers around. I might consider signing Rusev, possibly Oney Lorcan if I can find him a dance partner in the tag division, but truth be told, that's about it. Anyway, I figured I'd just throw my 2 cents into this conversation. It's a pretty hot topic right now, and to tell you the truth, I'm still not really sure why. Like I said, when you look at this story on the surface without trying to analyze the situation, I mean, you can pretty much boil the story down to a bunch of mid-card WWE talent won out of their contracts because they're either getting buried on TV or they're not getting used at all. Is there anything more to it than that? Maybe. Possibly. But like I said, let's not jump to irrational conclusions that any of these guys I just mentioned are going to be of great booming success to All Elite Wrestling. Believe me, those guys have enough talent over there that they need to get over that they currently have locked down to contracts. And, before they go signing away more money to more talent, I think they should establish what they already have. Hey, speaking of talent trying to get out of WWE, Jordan Myles has apparently quit WWE. Well, actually, that's not correct. He informed us via social media that, and I quote, he quit effing WWE. Hey, I don't judge personal lives, man. I had no idea that Jordan had such a sexual drive behind the scenes. I don't really know how you can F WWE as a profession, but hey, apparently Jordan's making it happen. That's a lot of effing. Anyway, he was sure to inform us on this rather derogatory Instagram post that he recently uploaded, wherein he grammatically dropped the F-bomb 10 times over, several of which he used as irrational adjectives to describe verbs such as quit, stand, and hold. So, from what I can gather there, I presume that English/writing class was not Albert's strong suit in school. And due to the graphic nature of the content and YouTube's new video policy regarding kid-friendly content, I will not reiterate any of that verbiage here. He was also sure to educate us on the lesson that Jordan Myles is apparently his slave name, which is odd because I could have sworn that Jordan had a responsibility in picking that name, so I don't have an explanation on that one either. Now, of course, all joking aside, this all stems from the incident that went down a few weeks ago where Jordan expressed his outrage over a t-shirt design that represented racist implications. He's also been on record with targeting Ring of Honor's company for racist treatment toward its black performers. while simultaneously smearing one of ROH's highest grossing and successful wrestlers during its tenure as an organization, and who happens to also be black, Jay Lethal. So, bad blood between those two. So the dust is settled, and here we are in the aftermath of the whole ordeal. We've had a couple discussions here regarding what WWE's best course of action is in dealing with the situation, and based on the fallout to everything, I really don't even know how to respond to the situation. There's a lot of confusion still as to whether or not there was some kind of agenda on Albert's part regarding the t-shirt. There's confusion as to why he sporadically targeted ROH as a racist-driven business. There's confusion as to why he targeted Jay Lethal, who was essentially an innocent bystander in the whole discussion. Recently he's been publicizing that he's been dealing with a lot of anxiety and depression, and, it's something to take very seriously. So, I wish him all the best of success, but, he didn't exactly do himself any favors by basically being an unfiltered disaster on social media recently. So, no sympathy there. And you want my honest take? I think Albert's bitter. If you just want to boil this down to the most fundamental opinion that I have regarding the scenario, I think he's bitter that he wasn't being used on NXT television. I think something went down behind the scenes, possibly some kind of major blowout with management about creative direction or program vision. And ACH got frustrated, and basically he tried to use the t-shirt deal as a platform to vent his frustrations. Now, do I have confirmation of this? No, this is purely speculation. But let's look at the circumstances. Again, this is taken from Mark Middleton's report at Wrestling Inc. The Wrestling Observer newsletter points to how WWE made a mistake that was quickly rectified, this in relation to the t-shirt. But Myles went about things the wrong way. WWE officials reportedly very much tried working with Myles to help him out in the weeks before he went public with his issues. This is around the time he was no longer being seen at the WWE Performance Center in Orlando. PW Insider reported Myles had not been at the PC in recent weeks, but there was no word yet on if it had anything to do with his unhappiness over the t-shirt design. It is worth noting that Myles is the one who originally picked out the Jordan Myles ring name for NXT. This in conjunction with his insinuation that the name Jordan Myles was his slave name. Regarding Myles' future in pro wrestling, there's no word yet on if WWE will grant his release. The Observer reports that Myles has been in contact with at least one wrestling promotion, with him wanting to make an appearance, but that might not be legally possible as there is no indication that WWE has released him. So that is where we stand with Albert Hardy Jr., ACH, or at least that's what I'm told to refer to him as, considering that Jordan Myles is apparently his slave name that we can no longer reference. God, what a hypersensitive, petulant world we sometimes live in. All in all, I don't want to linger on this topic for too long because, to tell you the truth, there's still a lot of open-ended questions regarding the whole situation. Here's what I'll conclude. I don't have any idea what happened, but I can tell you this for sure. Everything that has transpired in the last 3 to 4 weeks regarding this Jordan Myles situation is a precise lesson in how to not solve your problems. From my point of view, everything Albert did to try and handle the situation was reactionary, it was poorly thought through, and it was spoken with irrational passion as opposed to rational thinking. And now we're in a boat where Albert's essentially walking out of his WWE contractual deal under the presupposition that the company is racially motivated and specifically out to target him because of his skin pigment. And I'll tell you the lesson I learned from this. Don't let the activist culture alter your control of sensible thought. As a reading from the Gospel of Tommy. So in one of the more interesting stories to hit the wrestling market this week, CM Punk returned to WWE. Well, kinda. More accurately, CM Punk debuted for WWE Backstage this past Tuesday night on Fox. This is from WWE's page. After a nearly 6-year absence from WWE TV, CM Punk made a shocking unannounced appearance on Tuesday night's episode of WWE Backstage, FS1's new weekly studio show. The two-time WWE champion arrived during the show's final moments, entering to the sounds of Living Colour's Cult of Personality, Punk's entrance music during his storied in-ring career. It's as simple as this. Just when they think they've got all the answers, I changed the culture, Punk told the camera before adding, I'll see y'all here next week. Within minutes, the WWE on Fox Twitter account confirmed that Punk will make periodic appearances on WWE Backstage beginning next Tuesday. And despite the initial shock of it all, news reports have now been coming out in the last few days that WWE headquarters were not all that impressed with the surprise return. Brad Shepard reported to Ringside News, I spoke to a source in WWE about CM Punk's new role on WWE Backstage. I was told his appearance/new role received a mild reaction at WWE HQ, and the source felt it was a flat return. There's still no deal with WWE at this time. He's all Fox Sports. The initial belief, though, is that this is CM Punk's initial attempt at melting the ice before inevitably getting into the ring again. Now, admittedly so, after watching the clips of Punk coming out to the closing moments of the show, the return did feel very underwhelming. And, even Dave was talking about this on the Sunday Observer Radio. The fact that there really wasn't a whole lot of substance to the Punk appearance, there was no major social media buzz afterwards, he wasn't a top trending story, the sports media wasn't immediately jumping in to get thoughts. The whole thing ended up exactly how this alleged WWE source describes it as. It was flat. Now, whether this is due in large part to the ongoing suspicions that this was evident to happen anyway, or the idea that everyone's sort of patiently waiting in the wings for Punk to actually show up on a WWE-run show, that's yet to be determined. But suffice it to say, the fact that this wasn't even one of the top wrestling stories of the week is even more shocking to me. Christ, there's more buzz going on right now on the status of Asuka and Kairi Sane's contracts than there is CM Punk. Think about how ridiculous that sounds on paper. So as we look to the fallout to everything within the last 5 or 6 days, what do we know? Well, for one, and probably the most important detail, Punk is not contractually obligated to WWE. He signed to Fox. So for anyone that initially had beliefs that this return automatically meant that Punk would be showing up on Raw or SmackDown anytime soon, we're sadly mistaken. We also know that Punk is not going to be a full-time newscaster on the FS1 Backstage program, which could be a significant detriment to the ratings on the show over a period of time. Let's not forget that the week before Punk showed up, that WWE Backstage show drew an abysmal 49,000 viewers. And the Punk deal did manage to bump up those viewers to 100,000, but considering where that show started in mid-October to where it is now, I'd be very concerned with the idea of Punk only making sporadic appearances on that show going forward. Now, do I agree with this Ringside News article in the sense that Punk may be using this as a launching pad to get himself back in the ring later on? I believe anything's possible. I know that Punk has expressed interest in getting back in a wrestling ring at some point, under the right circumstances, of course. And again, with WWE trying to go all in and make these Saudi shows equivalent to the WrestleManias in terms of presentation and market value, I could see them trying to get something together to have Punk work a Saudi show or two in 2020. Do I buy the idea that Punk is merely interested in being a host for WWE Backstage with no agenda, or not eventually finding his way to transition into a role with WWE programming at some point? No, not really. I think there's a part of Punk that still kind of yearns for that nostalgia of getting back in the ring, be it for the money or the opportunity to work with some of the new talent. But it's really hard for me to believe that this WWE Backstage role will not eventually be a transitional point for Punk to find his way back working with a WWE show at some point. I think the real question is, how long do they wait before capitalizing on it? Because the thing we have to remember is this. Punk is not a young guy anymore. He's 41, 42. I mean, at some point, he's going to be retiring from active competition altogether. So, if they're going to eventually agree on terms for Punk to work a couple of programs, they need to be jumping on that ship as early as 2020. Because, man, I'll tell you, if they wait too long, they're just wasting more of the shelf life that Punk has left, which I can't foresee is that much at this point. I am interested to see how this helps out WWE Backstage, though. I mean, going from 49 to 100,000 viewers in 1 week is a good start. But in the long term, I'm still wondering how much of a reflection Punk is going to have on that show, especially if he's only going to be fulfilling a part-time role. I'm also interested to see how this reflects WWE programming in the future. Because now that the news is broken regarding Punk's big return to the wrestling media, those CM Punk chants are going to be louder and more resonant than ever at WWE shows. And what with Survivor Series being at the Allstate Arena in Rosemont, Illinois, right around Punk hometown territory, you know that those fans are going to be expecting CM Punk to show up in some capacity. So there is that threat of possible rebellion if Punk doesn't make some kind of appearance at that show. Be it as a run-in or just to get a big pop by coming out on the stage before they fade to black. I mean, we all know how long it took before those CM Punk chants started to subside altogether. It took months for those chants to die down. Almost years to die out completely. So they're really going to have to be cautious of how they program their content going forward. I guess you can look at it and say it's exciting, especially if you're a disgruntled WWE fan. And they've already killed off the momentum of the Fiend character, as well as killed off any momentum they could have had with Cain Velasquez by jobbing him out in his first and maybe only WWE match. They need to keep these dwindling fans latched on somehow. And I think CM Punk is definitely that guy. But again, that all boils down to what both parties want. Does Punk want to put himself back in that environment again? And does WWE have any interest in putting Punk in that environment again? All questions that we really don't have answers to and can only hope to get answers in weeks to come. So this coming weekend, we have 2 WWE shows. On Saturday, November 23rd, we've got the NXT Takeover Wargames special. And on Sunday, we've got the Brand versus Brand versus Brand, Raw versus SmackDown versus NXT Survivor Series show, both of which are taking place at the Allstate Arena in Rosemont, Illinois. And again, just to reiterate for those of you that need a refresher, yes, that show will be taking place in CM Punk territory. Does that automatically mean that we are guaranteed a CM Punk appearance on the show? No, it doesn't. Is it likely that we'll see CM Punk in any capacity on the show? My signs are pointing to no, but I will concede the timing is impeccable, to say the very least. Anything is possible with WWE anymore, so I guess we shall see. Anyway, I did want to run down these cards and give you, I guess, my early predictions as to how I see the matches going down. So for NXT Wargames, we've got 3 announced matches as of this current recording. We've got Rhea Ripley, Candice LeRae, Tegan Nox, and Mia Yim versus Shayna Baszler, Io Shirai, Bianca Belair, and Kaylee Ray in the first ever women's Wargames match. And thank Christ we didn't have to hear that hammered down our throats as to how revolutionary this is in WWE's history books. What with the first ever women's Wargames match. God, this is the main roster. I wouldn't expect anything less. As far as the match itself goes, there's a decent amount of talent in there to keep the match from bogging down too much. Wargames matches are always extremely formulaic in terms of booking, which sometimes can equate to the matches feeling very boring at times. I do expect the match to be good, if unspectacular. And one of the key stories going into that match is how Dakota Kai will get involved, if she even does at all. And it's interesting in the sense that Wargames is a match that has traditionally been won by the babyfaces. Granted, that's not always the case, but historically speaking, the concept of Wargames usually is designed to put the babyfaces over the heels. But with Dakota Kai sort of hanging in the shadows, it'll be interesting to see what her involvement is. Whether or not she screws the babyface team over and helps Baszler's team wins is yet to be determined. I still think it's a little early to blow off that heel turn, so I'm kind of hoping they hold off on it a while longer. That being said, would I be surprised if Dakota showed up and cost Rhea's team the match? No, I wouldn't. I mean, it makes storyline sense. It's just, I feel that they can really milk this storyline more and build up to it more on television over the next several weeks before they blow it off. But any way they could do it, it would make sense. So I predict Rhea's team to go over, but I'm not super confident on that one. Following that, we have the men's Wargames match of Undisputed Era versus Tommaso Ciampa, Keith Lee, Dominik Dijakovic, and a mystery partner to be announced. As we all know from this past Wednesday, Matt Riddle was taken out of the Wargames match in order to replace the Finn Balor-Johnny Gargano match that was supposed to take place. But with Gargano being out with a neck injury, that match will no longer be taking place. So that now leaves the babyface team here at a one-man disadvantage heading into the go-home show. It's a real intriguing story that they have now. You know, who's going to be that final partner for the babyface team at the show? And to tell you the truth, if I were booking it, I would not reveal who that final guy is until the actual Wargames show. I really think they should milk that anticipation for all it's worth. You know, in terms of who they bring in for that final partner, I honestly have no idea. I mean, they've been so gung-ho with doing the NXT UK crossovers lately. I wouldn't be surprised to see someone from the UK brand show up. I know guys like Velveteen Dream and Kushida have been dealing with injuries lately, but considering they've been out of action for a while, I could see one of them making a big return if they've been cleared. You know, in the case of Velveteen Dream, it would make perfect storyline sense, considering that he was the guy that got laid out by Undisputed Era weeks back. Speaking of back, I know Dream's been dealing with a pretty significant back injury for a while. Haven't really heard a medical update on him lately, but you know, if he ends up getting cleared before Saturday, I could definitely see them bringing him in as that final fourth partner. Kushida, I could see as a last-minute fallback, but you know, out of the names I just mentioned, he's probably the least suspect of the bunch to come in. In terms of who I think goes over, I think there's a lot more mileage right now with building up your challengers to go after the Undisputed Era's championships. You know, you're sort of protected in a match like this because the Undisputed Era can take the fall without losing their belts. You know, guys like Keith Lee and Dominik Dijakovic could really benefit from a major takeover win right now. You literally just had Ciampa return from injury. I think you got to put the babyfaces over here. And also think of it this way. I mean, let's say that things work out exactly as I intended. You know, and Velveteen Dream returns as the fourth and final partner. Well, right there, you basically set yourself up for 3 title programs going forward. You got Ciampa versus Cole for the NXT title, which they've been teasing for weeks now. You continue the strong Dream feud over the North American title, which they had to put on a hiatus due to Dream's injury. And you can also kickstart the Dream Team idea that I had with Keith Lee and Dominik Dijakovic going after the tag titles. So you've really got a unique way of using this match to launch these guys into title contention. I mean, that's what I'd do if I were booking it. But I guess we'll see what they come up with. And finally, we've got Matt Riddle versus Finn Balor to round out the card. Or at least for the time being. Simply put, I think you got to put Balor over here. I mean, you're trying to establish his new heel persona. He's never worked as a heel in WWE before. This is a brand new position, a new role for him. I don't think you have a choice on this one. Balor's got to go over. You know, whether that's by cheating or some underhanded tactic, there's really no other suitable finish you can come up with. Now, yes, this does suck if you're a Matt Riddle fan, which I very much am. I mean, to think that as recently as October, Riddle was wrestling Adam Cole for the NXT title in one of the hottest TV matches of the year, to now he's probably going in there to do the job for Finn Balor at a takeover. I mean, that kind of sucks, especially considering the wave of momentum Riddle's been on recently. But, you know, to tell you the truth, I've really sensed a bit of regression with the Matt Riddle momentum lately. You know, I know he showed up with a lot of steam, even going back as early as January of this year. But, you know, he's kind of been a victim of not striking while the iron's hot. He lost a North American title match to Velveteen Dream at WrestleMania weekend. He spent most of the summer feuding with Killian Dane, a feud that I still don't even remember what they were even fighting about to begin with. Then he lost his NXT title match to Adam Cole. Afterwards, he's pretty much hovered around as a background player in the Wargames build. I mean, recently as a couple weeks ago, didn't he just do a clean job in the main event of a TV match against the Undisputed Era? I mean, I know I probably didn't talk about that heavily as I probably could have, but that's a baffling booking decision in my opinion. Riddle should not be losing cleanly in any major capacity, especially if you're making strides to building this guy up into main event status. If beating him in random TV matches ain't doing this guy any favor, that's for sure. It's like, yeah, there's people that still react to him and people love him, but it doesn't feel as earth-shattering as it did at this point last year when Riddle was getting ready to debut for the company. And there was a lot of buzz circulating on social media about that debut. And it tied us in with the fact that Riddle's probably going to be losing to Balor on Saturday. It's like, where do you really go with him afterwards? I mean, the only thing I can think is that they end up having him team with Keith Lee to go after the tag titles, but I mean, the thought of Matt Riddle being in a tag team, I don't know. I think Riddle's better suited as a singles guy. At least with Lee and Dijak, there's a chemistry between those two that I think would equate to them having some pretty epic tag matches. And then you could also entertain the thought of turning Matt Riddle heel, but, who wants to boo Matt Riddle at this point? Typically if you're building a babyface challenger down or you're trying to tear him down with losses to build him back up, you could go that route, but they got so many challengers going after the NXT title right now in that main event picture. Riddle just kind of falling to the wayside. And like I said, your only other cop-out method is to turn him heel, but I just don't think that'll end up going well. So Riddle's been a very interesting case in NXT this year, and definitely a case that I don't think has been touched on well enough by the major wrestling journals. Anyway, that's what we have for the card thus far. If I had to venture a guess as to what they would have to round out the card, I'd presume they'll announce the Pete Dunne, Killian Dane, and Damian Priest three-way for the show, which is another very odd feud that, much like Dane's feud with Riddle, I don't really know why any of them are mad at each other or what they're fighting for, other than Killian being angry that Pete broke his fingers a few weeks back. And if they had a fifth match booked, I'd maybe put stock in them booking a Lio Rush Angel Garza rematch for the Cruiserweight title. It possibly is like a curtain jerker or something to pop the crowd at the beginning. But again, that all boils down to time management. If they had 4 matches booked with the fourth being the Dunne, Dane, and Priest match, I could see that being the full card, especially if they want to give those Wargames matches some time. Although the thought of the women's Wargames match going 40-plus minutes definitely worries me. So that's NXT. And then we have Survivor Series the following night, which is a show that'll be interesting for a variety of reasons. The main one being the question of whether or not Vince tries to book a themed story throughout the night wherein the NXT guys end up jobbing out in most of their matches, which I could absolutely see him doing. Anyway, for that card, we have Brock Lesnar versus Rey Mysterio for the WWE Championship, a feud that apparently dates back to a Raw episode weeks back where Brock killed Rey and his son Dominic with a bunch of Germans and F5s. Again, keep in mind, I don't watch Raw and or SmackDown regularly, so I'm going into most of these matches having no idea what the bulk of the backstory is. As far as who goes over, isn't it kind of obvious? What would their motivation be for taking the belt off of Brock, especially now? Plus, every time I see the video clips of Raw or SmackDown segments pertaining to this feud, I'm usually watching Rey run off Brock with a chair or sending him packing in some capacity. They're basically lulling us into a false sense of security to make us believe that Rey has Brock's number, only for it to probably turn out at the end that Brock will annihilate the guy and kill him in like 5 minutes. We have a match that is being billed as, and no, I am not making this up, we have several of these throughout the show, a brand supremacy match. It is a brand supremacy triple threat between Raw Women's Champion Becky Lynch, SmackDown Women's Champion Bayley, and NXT Women's Champion Shayna Baszler. I have virtually no knowledge of anything regarding this program, except for the brief snippet I saw on NXT where Bayley ran out and clubbed Shayna in the back with a steel chair. I would expect Becky to go over, considering that she's the biggest star of the three women here and looks to have more storyline implications coming out of it, but I guess we'll see on that one. We have another brand supremacy build match with the Raw Tag Champs, the Viking Raiders, versus SmackDown Tag Champs, the New Day, and NXT Tag Champs, Kyle O'Reilly and Bobby Fish. And for those of you wondering, I am not shocked in the slightest that Kofi Kingston has gone from top-level main event status and singles champion to 6 or 7-time tag champion in a fashion that has now been treading water for years now. And yes, I am also aware that WWE has changed Hanson and Rowe's names. Yes, they're incredibly moronic name changes. Yeah, nothing screams trepidation more than going up against a guy with the name Ivar. It's almost as intimidating as wrestling a guy named Bastion Booger or Hugh G. Rection. Anyway, I really don't know who they put over here. Best bet would probably be to have the War Raiders win, or whatever their team's called now. Viking Raiders, I guess it is. Probably with the New Day doing the job, but again, with Vince, you never know. You know, he might have Fish and O'Reilly take the fall thinking, ugh, look at these scrawny guys. They're puny twerps with no muscle definition. They're never going to get over. They also don't have long hair. Got to beat them both. So, we'll see there. Elsewhere, we have the 5-on-5 women's elimination match with Team Raw versus Team SmackDown versus Team NXT, wherein, as of now, none of the 5 women on the Raw or NXT team are announced, and the SmackDown women's team consists of Sasha Banks, Carmella, Dana Brooke, Lacey Evans, and Nikki Cross. Sounds incredibly enticing. Cannot wait to see Carmella or Dana Brooke lock up with Bianca Belair or a Rhea Ripley. Whatever. We also have the men's Raw versus SmackDown versus NXT elimination match with Team Raw consisting of Seth Rollins, Drew McIntyre, Kevin Owens, Randy Orton, and Ricochet versus SmackDown's team of Roman Reigns, Mustafa Ali, Shorty G, Braun Strowman, and King Corbin versus NXT guys to be announced. Yes, they have not announced the participants for the NXT team yet. My guess would be, well, based on the circumstances they're in right now, my guess is that the partners will end up being Adam Cole, Matt Riddle, Dominic Dijakovic, Keith Lee, and Tommaso Ciampa, which actually on the surface would be an excellent match on paper. Unfortunately, it also has the potential to be a giant ring cluster of dudes with no ebb and flow. So, I guess we'll see there. Also, nitpick question, but aren't Roman Reigns and Baron Corbin feuding? And didn't Corbin and Gable have a huge feud recently that culminated in them having like 5 or 6 separate televised matches, one of which being a King of the Ring final? It's like, why are these guys teaming? Aside from the fact that they're on the same brand, am I missing something there? Or is this just the way I'm supposed to view it as a fan? And the idea that a lot of these guys are in current feuds with one another, can't stand each other, but yeah, because they're fighting for this alleged brand supremacy, which we all know doesn't mean jack squat anyway, they've decided to coexist for one night to work as a team. Is that the story here? God, is it any wonder I stopped watching the main roster garbage? Then we have U.S. Champion AJ Styles, Intercontinental Champion Shinsuke Nakamura, and North American Champion Roderick Strong in a 3-way. By the way, crucial question as well. What the hell is the difference between the United States and the North American Championship? Does the North American title also count Canada and Mexico into the equation as well? Which means, if we're keeping consistency of our global structure here, AJ Styles is the least represented champion of the 3 in this match, despite being possibly the biggest star out of the 3 talents in this match. Bummer. Anyway, joking aside, I really don't see this match going any other way except AJ winning. He's been heavily pushed on that Raw show with the OC faction. They had a recent showing on NXT a couple weeks back. Nakamura just seems like a placeholder in this match, and Roddy's probably there to do the job anyway. Now, granted, WWE has a track record of booking three-ways where the heels run in at the very end to steal the win, so I could see them throwing NXT a bone here by putting Roddy over and jumping in at the last minute to steal the win. I could also see them going with Shinsuke as well. But if I were a betting man at the moment, I would think AJ goes over here. Actually, now that I just thought about it, isn't AJ a heel too? Yeah, AJ Styles is a heel, isn't he? So they have a three-way with three heels. Don't even try to make sense of it. Just watch it for what it is. And then finally, we have The Fiend versus Daniel Bryan for the WWE Championship in a match that has no brand supremacy at stake and no involvement from NXT champion Adam Cole, which I find strange, to say the least. Not exactly sure what the thought process is there, but whatever. Kind of a foregone conclusion that Bray's going over here, but I don't really see how they could go any other way. I mean, you just put the belt on him at the Crown Jewel show. They've apparently debuted a new blue belt design specifically for the Fiend character. I think it'd be too early to even entertain the thought of taking the title off Bray right now. So I've got to assume Bray wins. Yeah, granted, I also presume that Bray would win the Universal title at Hell in a Cell in October. And, well, I wasn't exactly correct in that prediction, was I? But the way I see it, yeah, they're in damage control mode right now with the Fiend character. I haven't seen how his character has reflected WWE programming lately, so I can't tell whether or not this character has fully lost its steam coming out of the Hell in a Cell show. I guess I can only judge it based on the reaction he gets at Survivor Series. But again, it'll be interesting to see what they do. Anyway, that is the lineup for this weekend. It should be a fun weekend, with a big question mark tacked on to the end of that sentence. I mean, I'm really looking forward to the Wargames show and seeing what they come up for that. I guess Survivor Series will be interesting in the sense that I can't wait to see how Vince books the NXT guys. I mean, that could go any number of different ways. Does he 50-50 everything? Or I guess since we're talking about three brands here, does he 33.3% everything? And does he have all the NXT guys job in their designated matches? Does he throw one or two guys a bone, but pretty much establish that the main roster is a superior brand? I don't really know. It's Vince. I mean, the dude changes his mind more than our politicians do during the primaries, so it's hard to get a grasp of what can happen. But chime in below and let me know what you think and how you see things going down this weekend. And before we wrap it up this week, I want to take this time to thank everyone who stuck through this video. If you have not done so already, make sure you subscribe and click that bell icon to stay notified of all and any future FSWR content on this channel. Again, that is Monday and Friday that we have uploads here, every week on the 5 Starr Wrestling Report YouTube page. And with that, I will check back with all of you this coming Friday for the 5 Starr Wrestling Report review series.